answer. Okay, so thanks very much for coming, and I think what we'll do is just start right away. And I think, Karen, I think we'll start with you. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll go on to Peter and Derek shortly. Thanks very much. Thanks, Karen.
You just want me to do a general introduction first? Yeah.
Yes, please. I think so.
Okay, so it's nice to see a few familiar faces, actually. I'm Karen. I'm head of volunteering at Croydon Voluntary Action. I've been here now 14 years, longest job I've ever had. Worked in the voluntary sector now for about 35 years in various different roles, but mainly managing volunteers and managing projects and all sorts of general activities within the voluntary sector, from supporting refugees that had arrived with young children, to running youth clubs and summer schemes, and generally ended up at CVA managing, at the moment I think we have about 500 volunteers. So it's been a varied career in terms of things. I don't think I ever decided that I was going to be a volunteer manager. I just ended up managing volunteers, and actually have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of the most rewarding jobs you can ever have, because you're working with people who need people. And so I've been doing that for 15 odd years here, but as I say, I've been doing it a lot wider than just things, but also in my spare time I'm director of a couple of charities, and I own my own business. So who's next? Peter?
Okay, Peter, would you like to introduce yourself and say hi to everybody, and just a quick overview, and then we'll go more specifically into jobs and career pathways into the voluntary sector.
Sure, no problem. Hi everyone. So my name's Peter Phillips. I was the Employment and Social Inclusion Manager for mine in Croydon. So I used to manage our employment service. So we got involved a lot with the voluntary sector and finding voluntary opportunities for our clients. I'm now I'm now a MHFA, mental health first aid instructor for mine in Croydon. So I actually teach awareness training around mental health. So I was pleased to attend this, because voluntary work does mean a lot to me, because actually if it wasn't for voluntary work, I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing right now. So if I go back quickly, so I used to work in the coffee industry, worked in retail. I was made redundant, and then I was working part-time because I had to pay a mortgage, but I used my spare time to volunteer. I didn't choose mental health. It's just that I found out that I needed a volunteer assistant at what's called the Tunbridge Wells Resource Centre. So I live out in Kent, and never looked back. I didn't really understand most of the severe and enduring disorders like schizophrenia and things like that, but I learned so much working directly with clients. But so I started volunteering there, then I volunteered for Oxley's NHS Trust in Bromley before I applied to become a project worker for mine in Croydon, and now I am a manager. So it just goes to show where volunteering can go. So it does mean a lot to me, so I was quite pleased to be invited to this event. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I just realised I think it'd be better if I just stayed on for a while. Could you tell us what you do, and a quick route into how you've ended up doing what you do?
Yep, no worries at all. Hello, everybody. My name's Derek. I am currently the operations manager for HomeStart Croydon. HomeStart, for those of you that don't know, is a charity that supports families with young children. So we have a large pool of volunteers who work directly with families to help them overcome difficulties in their lives at different times. I'll maybe cover a little bit more of the detail of that later. So how I got here, I've been with HomeStart Croydon for 4.5 years now. As I said, I'm the operations manager. I previously worked in a number of large commercial organisations, and I'd gone through, as I think Peter mentioned, a redundancy. And while I was figuring out what I was going to do with my life, I decided to spend some of the time volunteering. So I volunteered as a youth mentor in Sutton, so not far away. And I had an opportunity to join the team there as a part-time coordinator for that scheme, which I took. I never imagined myself working in the charity sector. As I said, always worked in fairly high-powered commercial roles, but I loved it. It was totally different, and I think I'd found my home. In that particular role, I ended up being there for 5 years, and most of that time was spent working on youth employability projects, helping young people find jobs. And then I moved on to another charity, and then after that I ended up here, and I love it here too. The worth of what we do is immense. The opportunities for your own personal growth and development are huge. And we'll talk a little bit later about the different types of roles that you can do in a charity, how you might get into them, what that means to you in terms of career and where you might go to. But yeah, that's my background for now.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Derek. I think there was a bit of a problem with some sound when you were talking, but if anybody's got any questions specifically for Derek, they can actually ask those now. Actually, what's quite interesting as I'm hearing this and listening to everybody is that the 5 of us who are on this call, Natasha and myself, Peter, Karen and Derek, we've all volunteered and we've all ended up with jobs from volunteering. I volunteered over, I don't know if anybody knows it, the wildlife at Paddington Park. I don't think it's there now, the Wildlife Hospital, because I love animals. And they offered me a job there, and you know, all your stories are very similar. And in actual fact, Natasha came and volunteered at Croydon Commitment, and now she's working there. So I mean, I think everybody who's looking here as maybe an idea to think about volunteering, you know, we've all got jobs through it. So whether or not you actually have a real calling for it, it doesn't seem that any of us particularly did to start with. And here we all are working in the charity and voluntary sector. So I think the best thing to do is we'll go back to Karen very briefly. And Karen, perhaps you can suggest ways or opportunities through volunteering and what people might be looking through or for in the voluntary sector. And then we'll just go through to Peter and then Derek, because it's a really good opportunity and it's also something really nice to do. So Karen.
Okay, so I thought the first thing I'd do is just give you, I did a bit of a search today through all our databases and just had a quick look at how many charities and not-for-profit organisations there are in Croydon at the moment. Bearing in mind things are changing every day. There's 2,075 organisations employing people in the charity sector or not-for-profit sector in Croydon. Now, even if that some of those charities will only be employing 1 or 2 people, but some will be employing quite a lot. You know, we have 25 staff, so it's a big employer. I think we're often looked at as tiny employers, but actually as a sector as a whole, it's actually quite a large employer. So you need to sort of bear in mind that it's not just one corporate organisation. The other thing that I noted was the same thing Melinda was saying about how many people, and I asked all my colleagues over this last week, everybody I've met and had a meeting with, how did you find out about your job? How did you get your job? Every single one of them had done some sort of volunteering to get an understanding of what they wanted to do within the sector. Sort of more try before you buy sort of system, you know, understanding where the sector comes from. You're never going to be a millionaire working in this sector, but actually the job satisfaction is more than compensates. You can make a really good living, but actually have a really good, and knowing that you're helping people, that's worth a lot of money. So I had a bit of a scout round today, and there are jobs being advertised. I saw Melinda, you sent one through quite recently, but there are quite a few jobs being advertised around in the voluntary sector at the moment. But my recommendation, and I suspect that would be for quite a lot of people in the voluntary sector is actually do some volunteering. Get in there and you'll hear about the jobs before they go advertised. One of the things with CVA is that we always advertise internally before we put it out, and every volunteer is counted as an internal applicant. Now, most organisations have the same policies because it doesn't go against any employment law. You can always advertise internally. If you're a volunteer, you're counted as an internal applicant. So it's a good way of getting ahead of the game with everyone. The other thing I was thinking is go with your passion. You know, if you really, really love animals, volunteer with animals. That doesn't mean to say you'll end up working as a paid job with animals, but your role will give you the skills and the knowledge of what it's like to work in a charity, and you'll have something very different to talk about when you go for those interviews. Everybody that I've purposely sat here because on the wall behind me is everybody that's got a job after volunteering at CVA. They're all on the wall. Those little pictures of people. They've all got a job, and one of the things we say to them is just you've got something different to talk about when you go to your interviews. Some real examples of work that you've done. And so even if you don't get a job with us, that actually the coaching and the way that we work with people, they hopefully will go on and get a job or go to university. So that'll stop me now so that I don't go on too long, Melinda.
Okay, all right. Peter, have you got anything to add to that?
Oh, I was really taken back what Karen said, so I definitely back what she said. And she mentioned earlier about, you know, because about try before you buy, which is the key thing about volunteering. You know, you're not committed, and if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You know, it's not like you got a contract of employment. So if it's not the role for you, you can just let the employer know. If you can give them notice, great, but you don't have to. But it's just the way. But just for me, I happened to be in the right sector. I was volunteering in mental health, and I really felt that this is where I wanted to work. But back at school, when I was at college, I would never ever thought about working in mental health. I actually wanted to be a vet, believe it or not. So I do have yourself, Melinda. I have a love for animals. I actually used to volunteer. So the very first voluntary job I had was for Last Chance Animal Rescue, which is in Edinburgh where I live, and I also volunteered for the Seal Sanctuary in Cornwall in Gweek. Because I love animals and like marine animals. So, but I never quite made it to be a vet. But and I do kind of regret that a little bit. But I love working with people, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But what I will say, everything voluntary work, and definitely what Karen said, the key thing is about it's meaningful. When you think about voluntary work, it's not just about volunteering in charity shops, because a lot of people just think, oh, it's just about working charity. It's not. It is difficult because obviously not every type of work or voluntary work you want to do can't always find it as a voluntary position, because most organisations are profit organisations. But just it's important that it is meaningful and it's something you're going to get something from it. So, and that's what I really got from volunteering. And the other thing is, when I used to manage the employment service in Mining Croydon, we had a lot of clients that used to come to us, and we used to work on their CV, and they'll say, well, what should I put? I haven't worked for a period of time, so I've got a big gap on my CV. What should I do? I'm not quite ready for work yet. And that's the other thing about voluntary work. You can put that on your CV. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid employment that goes on there. Voluntary work can also go on your CV. And it's a really good way of bridging that gap, and also keeping your skill set up. You might learn new skills or transferable skills you might be able to bring from previous work to a voluntary position. So, and like Karen just said herself, you are exposed to any opportunities that are advertised internally. It's very expensive to advertise job roles. So employees always go with internal adverts first, hoping they will be able to recruit someone internally rather than go externally. It's very expensive. You're talking thousands of pounds to advertise externally. And so you would be, you know, I mean, if you think about the competition, if you find a position internally, it's, you know, for example, Mining Croydon, we have 30 to 40 employed staff, you know, but once that job, and I think we've got about the same in volunteer numbers, but once that job goes out, you know, you're talking about thousands, millions of people seeing that advert. So yeah, I definitely back what Karen says, and yeah, voluntary work is it should really be considered, especially if you're someone that's, you know, looking for work. And the other thing to remember, I think a lot, Karen might be able to back me up here, is that a lot of people worry about if they're on receipt of benefits and they work, that it's going to affect their benefits. It won't. It's therapeutic work. That's always regarded it as. I mean, obviously, if you're volunteering 5 days a week, they could question that, but what you need to remember is it doesn't affect your benefits. And so, you know, I really encourage you to, you know, look out there, and Karen will probably tell you the best place to look, but CVA have their own website and you can register with them. But there are various other sites you can look at. But yeah, I think that's all I can say, but yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this is really good to hear, actually.
Yeah.
Derek, have you got anything to add to that?
I can always find something to add to it, although it is the downside of going last that everybody else has said all the big and important
Next time
things.
you'll be first then.
Sorry, Derek.
But there are a couple of things that I would like to pick up on, and they have both been touched on by Karen and Peter. But the first is, I guess, the non-financial benefits of working in a charity, and the other things that you get from doing that, and the experiences and the knowledge you gain, but also the really warm and nice feelings you get from knowing that what you're doing is actually helping real people, or in the case of those of you interested in animals, real animals. You're making lives better for people. You're not just working to make money for the people at the top of the organization. You know, Karen said you won't become a millionaire. It's almost definitely true, unless you happen to be the CEO of a multinational charity. But you'll work locally. You'll work with people that you know, people like you, people suffering with difficulties that you can help them with. You make lives better for other people, and that makes you feel good too. So moving on, it's also been mentioned about volunteering first to get a job. HomeStart Croydon is quite small. We only have 10 staff, but 3 of those staff members previously volunteered with us, and pretty much every staff member has volunteered somewhere else, but 3 of our current staff team did volunteer with us before. So they built knowledge and understanding of the work that we do, of the type of organization that we are, the way that we operate, and that definitely gives them a head start, or would give you a head start as well, when you're applying for a job with that sort of organization. You already know the answers to some of the questions you're likely to get asked. So there is huge value in volunteering first, especially when it's around something that you're really passionate about, something you really believe in, something you want to do. People who work in charities where they're perhaps just doing it because it's a job and they're looking for a 9 to 5, and they just want to shuffle paper across a desk or enter data into a database online, are probably not going to make it a huge success in a charity. Charities rely on people's vibrancy, positivity, enthusiasm, willingness to help, and desire to make a difference. If that's the sort of person you are, a career in charity world is a definite possibility.
Great, thank you very much. Peter, I can see you raising your hand. Do you want to say something?
I'm happy to wait. I was just asking about the questions in the chat box. There was a couple I thought I could respond to, but I'm happy to wait if you.
I was
fine.
going to come to those actually.
Okay.
Yes, so for the panel and everybody else, if you have a visual impairment, what are the chances in the voluntary sector in using counselling skills? And this has come from Carol. So would anybody like to take that? Karen?
I'll take it. I just because I can't find the little hand thing, so I'm physically putting my hand up. It's for me and for my organisation we work with, it's not about what you can't do, it's what you can do. So if you've got the skills to be a counsellor, then there probably is a route to counselling, paid counselling work. I'm visually impaired. Can only see out one eye. So there are I think this is one of the major differences in the voluntary sector, is that people look at what you can do, not what you can't do. And when people come to see me, and particularly around volunteering, they often say, well, I want to volunteer, but I can't do this, and I can't do that. And what we want to find out is what you can do, what your skills are, and match you with an organisation who needs that skills. So if you have got counselling skills and you have a qualification, then there will definitely be somewhere where you can actually be placed as to do counselling. So I think it's turning the conversation around, and we're very good at sort of putting ourselves down a little bit, aren't we? And not saying what we're good at. We're often much better at saying what we can't do. And I think you have to sort of change that dialogue a little bit. I think the only other thing that I was thinking whenever the others were talking was, you have to bear in mind what the charity needs, because charities don't take on volunteers just for the sake of having volunteers. They take on we take on volunteers because we need volunteers to help us run our services. So there has to be a balance between what you need to get out of it and what the charity needs to deliver. So I think we just have to bear that in mind. We don't have anyone in our office that doesn't have a job to do. So from the person that comes in and he does our petty cash for us, it comes in once a week and he adds up all the petty cash, does all the receipts and gets it ready to go to finance. That's valuable work for us, because it means I don't have to spend the whole morning doing petty cash. And I think that it's just bearing in mind that charities don't have volunteers just for the sake of having volunteers. I'm sure Derek will tell you, the volunteers you have working with you are really busy volunteers supporting families in a much more structured way than maybe some of the volunteering opportunities we have.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Can I interject? I'm Carol, who asked the question.
Okay. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. I can't remember the name of the lady who just spoke. Could you?
Is that Karen?
Karen, yes. Sorry, I didn't catch her name. I'm Carol. I asked the question. I'm doing some voluntary role position at Croydon Vision, but I've come initially from the public sector capacity. But my skill base, as I agree with Karen, is more communication, therapeutic area. And I'm hoping to go back to college to qualify as a counsellor next year. But why I raised this question, the majority of these charities is that I can understand are a profit accumulating organisation, and that's not something I want to go into. I want to go into what's making a difference within the inclusive, diverse community. So I just wonder if anything Karen or anyone in the panel could say, because I agree with what Karen says. I tend to, as a mature woman like Karen, I tend to play up the disadvantage of someone with a visual impairment than someone who has the capability, who hasn't got a disability. So thank you.
Karen, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what about charities. Charities have to have money to run. I'm sitting here in an office with a light on, no heating, thank goodness at the moment, keeping my fingers crossed that the heating doesn't have to go on soon. We do have to raise money. That's absolutely to deliver our services. We do. I'm a passionate believer that actually volunteers need managing and support. So as much as you think, so what I have to raise enough money for my volunteering program, it costs the organisation about £25,000 a year to manage our volunteering programs. So we've got to raise that money somewhere. It's not, we need an office space, we need the software, we need the adaptions for our volunteers. So yeah, it may seem that we're a profit maker, but we're not profit making. We're making enough money to deliver the services to support the people we want to support. And so it's I don't know how you do it without raising money. I'm not sure I'm answering the question exactly how you want it, but we will always have to have some sort of money to things. We want to employ people to run the services, and we employ.
For example, Karen, when you're charging, I mean, I understand with what central government's done, and thank you for answering my question. But for me, why I want to go into the charity sector, coming from a public sector point of view and doing volunteering, is that some organisations, charities, have to charge service users for the usage of the service that they're trying to provide, because they need to make the profit margins up. But not all disabled people can afford it. And then we're losing those people who were meant to be for service within a conclusive community. They're going because they cannot afford it. I want to work in an organisation, not that what I'm doing, what is thinking about how do we make an inclusive, diverse decision in the voluntary sector for the people, whether you can afford it or not, you can still use the service.
Well, I can only answer for our organisation, and very few of our services are paid for. All our voluntary sector services where we use volunteers are not paid for, they're free. So I can't really answer where charities have to charge. When a charity has to charge, it's to cover the cost of their services. Charities aren't allowed to make profits. They can make surpluses that actually then are ploughed back into the business, into the charity, but they can't make a profit as such that goes to shareholders, because that isn't how a charity works.
Yeah, I mean, that's
right. Well, thank you very much, Karen, and thank you very much for your encouragement about going into the voluntary sector as someone with a visual disability. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Carol. I have another one here from Gopal. Do you need experience or training beforehand to join in a mental health organisation on a voluntary basis?
Shall I answer that one?
Yeah.
I work for a mental health charity. Very interesting. So I call this, some people call this like the catch-22. It's a bit like getting a credit card, not having credit. The way I answer is that when I volunteered, I had zero experience in working in mental health. So yes, you can. So I think really what I tried to demonstrate when I applied was that I had the people skills. I think when you work in this in this area of work, where there's any sort of work in any sort of with disabled groups, it's about demonstrating empathy, compassion, and demonstrating those people skills. If you've got those, then you should get your foot in the door. I don't see, that's the whole point of volunteering. The voluntary organisations, the third sector, are not expecting volunteers to have all the skills, and they understand it's a way for them to get the foot in the door. So I had no experience when I started volunteering mental health, so I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say that you will have skills, may not be mental health, but actually mental health charities need administrators, they need bookkeepers, they need all sorts of different other skills that actually, and then working in that environment, you pick up lots of information about working in mental health. So there's different ways. I think don't forget that you all have skills, you have transferable skills. And I think that is really, really important to remember when you're looking to change a career. Is just don't forget of all those skills that you've built up over the years. I particularly like young people because they've always got loads of skills in social media, which I have absolutely none. So, I just think what you have to offer to an organisation.
And it's a bit like, sorry, go on.
Am I right in saying that, I wouldn't like to put it in percentages, but quite often a charity will pay for volunteers to go on training?
It will depend on their budgets.
Yeah, if we've got the funding to, otherwise we'll try and do it in-house. So we do it, for example, I am actually currently training staff and volunteers so they become mental health first aiders, which will be no cost to the organisation because I can do that in-house. But yeah, like Karen just said, if we have the budget there, and it's going back to what Carol's saying about money, it's sometimes charities now have to become more self-sufficient. There's less public funding out there. So we have to look at ways how we can raise money. So that's why I deliver MHFA to the corporate sector, as well as, the health services as well, so that we can put money to keep our services going. Because if we don't have any public funding coming in, we can't provide counselling or advocacy welfare benefits advice to our clients that access our services.
Okay, I have another question here from Carol. She wanted to know where she could find paid employment within the voluntary sector. So I'm guessing, is there like a voluntary kind of recruitment agency which it just covers the charitable sector, or a magazine or an online forum or anything like that?
When we're recruiting for staff, we use a website called charityjobs.co.uk, which is, and it's UK wide and every possible different type of job that you can imagine. So I would think if you're looking for paid employment, that's a good place to go to, just to get a feel for what types of roles are currently available, whether they're near you or whether you might have to travel to them, and it will give you an idea of the salaries being offered. So I think if you're at the point where you're thinking of wanting to have a career in the charity sector, then that's a good resource to go and do some research. The other way is really to just keep your eyes and ears open, and if you've got a particular thing you want to do, or a particular passion that you want to follow, just find the charities that are doing that and follow them and have a look at what they're doing. Look on their websites. Most charities, including us, will advertise jobs that they're looking to recruit for on their own websites. When we have to advertise more widely, we use charity jobs. But yeah, there are lots of websites that are dedicated to charity positions as well.
Okay, I have a question from Annette here, probably over to you, Peter, for this one. Where could I access a refresher mental health first aid course?
The best, I'm not actually qualified to do the refresher courses yet. I do the 2-day adult and online and the half-day mental health awareness. So the best thing you can do is if you go onto mhfa.org, the website, and if you look up their refresher course, they'll give a list of all the people who are delivering that training. So all the courses that MHFA deliver, I think it's mhfa.org.uk, yeah, will be all listed on there. So you can actually look up, do a narrowed search, look up the refresher MHFA course, and it'll be on there. But I'm hoping to actually do that qualification at the end of this year. So yeah, right. That's the best thing to do.
Sorry, hello Peter. I did my mental health first aid training with Croydon Council
okay, yeah,
a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure if I can still practice that, or do I need to do like a refresher course, because it has been a couple of years since I've done it.
What you can do in it, I don't know if you know, but Croydon Council have received some funding from TfL. This is as a result of the tram incident that happened a few years ago, and they've put that money into delivering MHFA training online. So you might, and it's free. So you might want to just register for that and do that again, and then get your certificate. So if you go onto if you just Google Croydon Council MHFA, you'll see it, and you can register, and it's free. I'm actually one of the trainers for that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Right. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Has anybody, either from the panel or from our participants, got any other questions or any information that they think would be helpful, either side of the equation, as it were? So are any of you actually looking for volunteers at the moment, or for people to employ, or know of anything at the moment? I think that might be handy. Yes, Karen.
Right. Obviously, we have our database of volunteering opportunities, which is updated all the time. So it's worth keeping a look. You can put it in the chat in a minute. There's several other websites, Do It website. Our one is specific for Croydon. The thing I would say at the moment, though, is we've just come out of a pandemic. Lots of organisations are gradually opening up again, so it's a good time to keep an eye out. And I like the way, Derek, what you were saying about follow the organisation that you're really interested in, because when their volunteering opportunities come up, when their paid employment comes up, you'll see it on their website first before you see it on someone else's website. So make sure that you you follow those organisations. There was something else you were saying. work experience with young people. I think I can see Annette's asking. At the moment, we don't have a work experience for young people program, but there's nothing to stop young people volunteering, depending on what they want to do. A young man came in today and he wants to get some volunteering onto his CV ready for, so that when he applies to university. But he was very clear about what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. So we just found an organisation and he contacted them directly. So rather than we didn't have a specific opportunity in that, we just found an organisation that was doing interesting work that he wanted to do. And we found an organisation that would use his skills, even though it's not what he particularly wanted to do. So he had a particular skill around social media and writing content. So I found an organisation that were really keen to interview him. So I think it takes a little bit of research, and I think research is really important with all of this, and to think a little bit outside the box. Don't just go through a list of opportunities and think that's it. Our advisors are very, very skilled in thinking outside the box.
Okay. Would you be able, sorry, Karen, so many questions. Would you be able to find the social media company that you referred that young person to?
I didn't refer them to a social media company. I referred them to a charity that needed someone to help them with their social media.
Excellent. Okay, I suppose I'll have to dig
around.
But
if you want to do, there is I think it's next week, if somebody's interested in social media, there's a free workshop with WhatsApp and using WhatsApp for to promote organisations. Have a look on CVA's website and training. There's quite often a lot of training on there.
So was it on CVA, did you say? Sorry.
Look on our training programme. There's a WhatsApp training session on using WhatsApp to promote opportunities. So all links into that social media, and quite often we'll have a Twitter one, and that they'll come down, and Facebook will do stuff. So it's worth keeping a look. It's all like magic. It keeps popping up in the chat. Well done, Natasha.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I just, because there was a couple of comments about young people volunteering or doing work experience. I can answer on behalf of mine in Croydon. So we work with adults to volunteer, or if we were to offer work experience within our client services, you have to be 18 or plus, because it is an adult service, and it's all to do with our insurance as well. Because if you're under 18, you're still regarded as a minor. But however, with our charity shop, you can be 16 plus to volunteer. So we have a charity shop in Addiscombe. And can I just add to what Derek said? I was also going to say about charity job being a good website for third sector roles, but they also advertise voluntary roles as well. So you'll see it on the website.
So Peter, would we contact you for that in terms of the charity shop?
If it's still our Addiscombe shop, you can contact the shop direct. So I'm happy to leave.
On the website, it's still on the website.
Is it still there? Thank you, Karen. Karen's
lovely.
Us. Okay. So have a look on there. But we're still looking for volunteers. So have a look, and
I will. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Well, last chance really, because we'll be drawing this to a close in the next 2 or 3 minutes. If anybody's got any further questions, what I would say actually on the social media front, and because we have a link with a lot of community groups and organisations, is that very small groups often do want, particularly I suppose with regard to young people, is skills with social media and getting their messages out. So if you're a school or a college and you think you might like to work as a unit with a charity, that might be one way of doing something for the charity, but also doing something for your class. We'd always be very pleased to hear about people offering things like that. Anything else to add, Peter, Derek and Karen, before we leave the session? Top tips for applying?
Well, I think if you're applying for a job in a charity, and the top tip, it's the usual things, you do your research, but if you have got any experience of volunteering in that field, that will definitely make your CV stand out. If charities are looking for people who they think can do the job but will also fit in. One of the things we haven't really talked about is is working for a charity easy? And the answer is no most of the time, because you might apply for a job but you might find you're asked to do a multitude of other things, so you have to be quite flexible and adaptable. But it does mean that your experience grows really quickly, because you get to try lots of different things and meet lots of different people and learn lots of different things. So if you have already got some experience with that charity, then your CV or application is going to come up to the top of their list when they're looking to recruit new staff. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is in terms of work experience, because I've seen work experience flow through the chat box a couple of times, and we try where we can to take on students for work experience. It's usually during the summer when they need to do that. We currently have a work experience person on board who we've recruited through the DWP Kickstart scheme, which provides a 6-month placement for people to improve their skills and their confidence, to equip them to go on to get a job doing the things that they want to do. So most charities are, we try and be helpful. We want to make things better for people. We're not just chasing bigger and bigger profits. We don't make profits. Any money we get, whether it's through donations or grants, is used to run the service. It's used to provide support to families that need it. There's no big bank balance behind us. By the end of the year, the money's all spent and we start again.
Yeah, I would actually echo that point that Derek's made, particularly in the smaller charities, not so much so with the bigger nationals or multinationals. You do have to kind of be able to go the extra mile and to put in a bit of extra time here or there. You need to be able to do pretty much everything. If you've not got very many people or colleagues, working with you, you really you're not really in a position to say, I can't do that, I won't do that, it's not my job description, because quite often the job description is just the charity. So you just have to keep going, and it's a bit of a test sometimes, but it's, as Derek was saying, it's great because you pick up a lot of skills. I've just noticed another question here. Karen, is the list of Croydon charities you were mentioning at the start accessible to the public?
What our directory is called, there's 2 parts to it. It's called Simply Connect Croydon. It's a list of the activities, and we're now adding all of the organisations on there, and you can search it. So if you're searching for an organisation that works with children, you can search through that. It's Simply Connect Croydon. I think that's how it says, or Connect Well Croydon. Sorry, it changed its name last year. Connect Well Croydon. I think that was really good what you were saying, Derek. And I think one of the other things, if you is as a tip to looking for work in a charity, is just know the organisations. You need to sort of understand what they do, because even if you're an administrator, you can fit into any charitable organisation, but look for the one that fits what you've got a passion about. So when you go for the interview, you want to be able to talk about why you, as a charity, we want people who are passionate about what we do will fit in better with the people that are in our office, because the people in our office are all passionate about what they do. And you very quickly notice within charities, if you get a new person and then they're there because it's a job, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the ones that move on and develop quicker are the ones that are really interested in what you do and have a passion for what you do. So I think that that's the great thing about working in this sector, is that you have a lot of You have a lot of opportunities to move around the sector. I mean, up until I came to CVA, I've not had a job for more than 5 years. And that's because charity sector work is usually contract based, and projects are funded and then they not funded, and then you get another job. And so you can move around and try different things, but still have employment. So I think it's a more flexible way of working than maybe a corporate sector. And I like it. I still kind of like it, even though sometimes you're a little bit worried that you might not have a job next week. But actually, nearly every year I've been under redundancy threat. But you know,
yeah.
hey,
Well, I think that's common across all of us here, isn't it? But we still manage. So. Okay, everybody, I think I'll bring this to a close now, but do get in touch with Croydon Commitment and we can pass on any last minute questions or things we haven't covered. And please do have a look out. In October, we'll be running our Business Open Door Month. Oh, and actually, Tasha's just reminded me there is a poll. Before you go, could you just actually, it'll take about a second to submit the poll. And that will just give us a bit of feedback.
Can I just say something quickly, Melinda?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Karen said earlier, which is really important, is that whether you're thinking about applying for a job in the voluntary sector or a voluntary role, is like you said, it's what Karen said is so important, is don't worry about, you know, not meeting the role requirements or the person spec. It's about what you can do. I think that what Karen says is really what you can do, and think about your transferable skills. That's so important. So I just wanted to reiterate that's the key thing. So definitely think about that when you're applying. Actually,
I have to say, I'm glad you brought that up because we've been doing quite a few of these recently, and speaking to a lot of our business partners, we've noticed a real kind of switch from talking about qualifications and what job you've been doing into what transferable skills have you got. We did something with Evolve on Monday, and they were just entirely talking about transferable skills. They said, you know, we don't mind if you've been homeless, if you have a prison record, if you're old, if you're young, if you're disabled, if you're not disabled, you know, whatever. We want to see what you've got as a person. It's about the person. And we're hearing that more and more. So I think have a look at your CVs. I've just had a question here. Oh, Natasha's replied. If you want to send in your CV to Croydon Commitment, we will send it on anonymously to one of our business partners who's part of our Ways to Work programme, and they will have a look at it for you. They will make suggestions, send it back to us, and we'll send it back to you. So just bear in mind, this seems to be the buzzword at the moment, transferable skills. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll just sign off now, say goodbye, and do look out for our future workshops. Bye bye, everybody.